Hello, brilliant souls. Welcome to Rainbows and Real Life, the show dedicated to bringing positivity to the forefront, celebrating the power and promise of the human spirit, and supporting each other in challenging times. We believe when we join together, we all live better lives, and we are exploring ways we can do that in today's ever-changing world. I'm Pamela Aubrey, and I'm here with my amazing co-host, Christopher Rausch, the No Excuses Coach. Hello, Christopher.
What's up, beautiful? How are you?
I am fantastic. How about yourself?
I'm great.
Awesome. So great to see you. And we're talking tonight about how we can integrate the needs of the business, family, and the individual. Super excited to talk about this. And here to give us her expert insights is Martha Sullivan. Welcome to the show, Martha.
Hey guys, so happy to be here and talking with you guys. It's going to be a great discussion
with us. Thank you so much for being here. So I want you to talk to us a little bit about this idea of integrating the needs of the business, family, and individual. What does that really mean?
Oh my goodness. It really needs, I think, a recognition on the part of the family and the owners and the people in the business to realize that there are... I like to think about it in terms of like a 3-layer cake. And usually for most family businesses, the cake is all put together and the layers are sitting right on top of them. And you can't really necessarily see all the dynamics are going on. Am I mom right now? Am I the boss? Am I an owner? What hat do I wear at the time? And so one of the really powerful tools that we've found over the years in the work that I do is it's so helpful to pause and kind of pull the layers of the cake away from each other. And actually, like a Venn diagram, if you can picture, a layer cake as a Venn diagram, then you can start to see, oh, now I need to be the sister. Now I need to be, put on my owner's hat. And that might be within the span of 5 minutes, depending on the situation. So it's a fascinating area. I love working in.
I love this idea. And so talk to us a little bit about how you're seeing this show up right now in just the current state of things. I know a lot of people are sort of transitioning to home businesses, and maybe their spouses are coming on board, or even in some cases, maybe their kids. So how is that presenting itself?
It's a really interesting time to work with family businesses because of this this phenomenon over the last 18 months in particular of work really invading into more homes than it ever has. And so the demands are, I think, really taxing the systems a lot. And so in terms of that dynamic, it really points to the need for more communication amongst the various players. The other factor that we're seeing is for years, we've been anticipating this tsunami, if you will, of business owners, what I refer to as the now generation. The now generation saying, you know what, it's time. It's time to transition to the kids, or it's time for me to sell it. And, pre-2019, I would say, the majority of the baby boomers were still having a lot of fun in their businesses. The economy was doing well and stuff was just humming. They were having a good time. And so they were thinking, maybe another year or two, and then I'll think about this, because I really don't want to think about it. Well, COVID changed that dynamic so harshly, and many of them are saying, "No, I'm done. I don't have the gas in the tank." But at the same time, they owe it to their families to prepare for that, not just pull the pin. If they pull the pin too fast, they're going to leave money on the table or do a really rushed, ill-considered process of bringing in the next generation and getting them ready. It's not fair to assume that just because the kid's been around the family business all their lives that they just automatically know what the deal is and how to run the business.
Sure.
It's just not fair.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting time. It's a great question, Pamela.
How are you? Thank you for that, Martha. How are you finding that people are dealing? You mentioned communication, which is obviously a paramount aspect of relationships and business and everything else. How are you finding people in their communication styles now, especially with, the cancel culture? You got the political unrest. You got all sorts of different things. You got people on sides, if you will. How are you finding the communication process with people? Are you finding that people are communicating and listening and understanding, or are you finding that there's a lot of agitation and arguments going on?
I think there is a greater elevated need for patience and kindness in our communications, and families and family businesses are in the thick of it because you're 24/7 with it. So it is a challenge. And if there are these individuals on opposite sides of so many of the debates that are out there with the cancel culture and everything else that's going on, it makes it very, very difficult. What we find the best practices in those situations is, if needed, bring in an expert to help kind of cool everybody down and reset the conversation, and then talk through what are our goals as a family, what is important to us as a family, and how does that business fit into it, and then what are the rules and expectations we're going to set up around there. And truly the best practices with a formal governance structure in terms of this is how somebody comes into the business, or this is when when we need to sit down and make a decision together, or how we are, what are our norms of behavior. So, but it's a hard time to be in business, but it's an even more challenging time to be in a family business.
That's so insightful. So what are some of the ways that, people can start to get a handle on the situation if they're already sort of in a situation where things are getting a little dicey, getting a little complicated, and what role does, say, emotional intelligence and some training around that sort of play along the way?
Yeah, we do a lot of training around the emotional intelligence and communication skills and things along those lines. It's been really fun. I've been working with a particular family business, and we introduce them to some of the communication style profile tools that are out there, and getting to know your colleagues as well as your family members at this level of, well, my style is I'm going to be hard charging, and I get stuff done, and the person sitting across the yeah, exactly. Right. The person sitting across the table from me might be, their natural tendency might be more, I don't want to say more accurate, but they might be more rules-based. They might be more formal and need more information in order to make their decisions, to be comfortable with their decisions. And that can be in fact, this one client, it's been fascinating to see people take that information and about themselves personally. So self-awareness is key in emotional intelligence, as well as understanding, well, how do you behave? And if I need to go and Christopher, if I need to come into you and say, you know what, we need to talk through this issue and we need to make a decision, the more I know about how you process and make decisions, the more effective I can be in helping the cause, as opposed to me coming in hard charging and you're one of these that needs more time to ruminate. I need to respect the fact that you need to ruminate and meet your pace if I'm going to be more effective, as opposed to shoving, my style on you. So emotional intelligence is really critical in
Oh
that.
yeah, that was a big subject of mine when I was doing a lot of speaking, was generational differences in the workplace, and also that emotional intelligence factor. What you were just recently talking about online profiles. What are some of the online tests or quiz that you would recommend for people to take to get themselves familiar, perhaps with what style they are? And also, to your point about that, it's such a fantastic point as well, because when I was in corporate, there were two other people and myself who we all had a challenge working together. I got along great with everybody else, but us three just could not work well together. So my boss sent us to what we called marriage counseling. And I was like, I don't need to go marriage counseling. No, these people are just jacked up. But what I realized and what I found out is that the three different types of learning styles, you got the what you were just talking about before. We have the visual learner, got to see things. You got the auditory learner who is fine with hearing things. Then you got the kinesthetic person, and that person has to mull it over and digest it. So if you have somebody like me who is like, yeah, let's go do this, and you have somebody like that, you have an opportunity for that frustration factor. So when we went there, we learned about the different types of styles so that we could visually walk into somebody's office and saw if they had a lot of stuff. Okay, they're probably a visual person, so I should bring charts and graphs and things of that nature, speak to them in their language, and even write stuff in their language to say, see how you see this, can you vision this, and doing that with auditory styles. What are your thoughts on that, as well as the places they can go to get quizzes?
That is, you're right on point. The tool that we use the most is the DISC profile. There's Myers-Briggs, there's Strength Finders. Strength Finders, I think you can go online and do pretty easily. The DISC survey is a more controlled environment type of thing. But the other thing that has been really was an interesting exercise was doing also a team assessment. There's a book by Patrick Lencioni called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and that builds on this whole concept of styles and how do we make decisions. And there's just a wealth of resources out there if people are interested in learning more about it.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Is there a difference between some of the tests, in certain environments? Are there some tests that are better for certain types of environments versus others?
That's a really good question, Pamela. I've been exposed to Myers-Briggs. I've been exposed to Hogan, obviously the DISC assessments, and I work with Wiley the most for the DISC. And different tools have different niches, and they also have their different way of communicating. Some people use in DISC, there's DICS. That's your moniker. I'm a D, you're a C, so on and so forth.
Right.
There are other tools that use animals. I'm an owl. I'm a lion. I'm a
I'm a teddy bear.
That's right. I'm just warm and fuzzy. I'm a big puppy dog. So it's really a matter of doing a little bit of research and understanding what their strength is and what their philosophy is about it. I don't like to use the term test because I don't think of these tools as a test. I think of these tools as a way of building awareness about who we are and what are our natural tendencies. And based on the natural tendencies, some of them also will say, well, here's your core of who you are, and then here's how you adapt. So, some people are chameleons and can adapt very well into a situation. There was another client we were working with, and one gentleman was like, this is baloney. This isn't me at all. This is garbage. And so we asked the other people in the room, because we do it as a team. And they're like, well, what are you guys thinking? Oh, yeah, that is totally him. And so it was really a matter of helping him understand that while at work, he was adapting to meet the needs of the environment. But when push came to shove, this other profile that he disagreed with was really who he was. And that was it for him. It was okay. But for other people, if I have to adapt a ton in my work because of the situation, and we all have to do it at different times, that can lead to the burnout that we're seeing so much in the world these days, in terms of I've had to do things that are really outside my comfort zone. And how much stamina do you have for that? And so it's a tool that people can use to understand how people are functioning now, and are they in the right seats? Do we need to make some adjustments to make people feel like they can be more effective in their roles?
That's so important. Thank you for sharing that. I think
bet.
about what we were talking about before, and thinking about I was in leadership for 26 years. I was the last position I had when I was director of operations, and I had staff and I had supervisors and everybody reporting to me. That was back in November of 2019,
Okay.
and I have not been in corporate or been in leadership. And I am so pop on, and I look at that, what the Great Resignation and everything that's going on, and
Yes.
the Gen Zs are just they've had enough of it. What is your experience with that, and what can we give to the adults to better understand what they're going through, and not just, is it really just they're the now generation, but what can we do to better understand really where they're coming from and where they want to go with business and their professional careers?
I've got kids that are millennials, and I have a Z, and let's be honest. Every generation has their self-interest that they're trying to deal with, but I don't think millennials get the fair shake. I think they have a great work ethic, but they also have a different tolerance level for diplomatically saying nonsense. And they're not going to put up with the same nonsense that baby boomers put up with. Baby boomers were raised in the workforce of put your head down, shut up, do what you have to do to get the job done, suck it up, buttercup. And that's not how other generations work. It's interesting because I just wrote a post on one of the social media sites about the Great Resignation, and sharing an article that I had seen. And I described a scenario where the gym that I go to, this young lady was working her tail off in the gym, and in terms of as an employee, not as an athlete. And she was the head coach going into COVID. But with COVID, then they had to do adjustments and furloughs and things of that nature. And all of a sudden, she was the studio manager and the head coach, and doing this and doing that and doing this and doing that. And she resigned and is going off to do something completely different than her current role. She's going to transfer to another studio where she's just going to be a coach and not have all this other layer. And I think, I haven't talked to her in depth, but from observing all this, I think a lot of it has come down to employers believe that it's the same stuff, different day. And we can just continue to expect people to come to work and do their job, and that's what we're there for. And I really encourage employers to start thinking about it in terms of, no, if you want people to work with you, you have to work with people. They're not working for you. They're working with you, and you need to map out what the goals are and listen and communicate. In the background, I heard some chatter, and my heart went out to this woman, because she said it took him 5 days to respond to my email. Him being her boss, when the only way she could communicate her resignation was through email, and he didn't reply for a business week. It's just like, really? What the
Wow.
heck? What
Yeah.
the heck? That's just
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's just heartbreaking and wrong. So my personal bias, and I've written blogs and stuff on this, I think it's time for us as employers to recognize that, yeah, it may cut into profits, but some profit is better than no profit. And we're seeing so many businesses have to shut down because they can't find any employees. Somebody was telling me that they went through a drive-through McDonald's and the line was so long they went inside and they waited and they waited and they waited and they waited. And finally the manager came out and he said, "I'm so sorry. I only have 5 employees."
Yeah.
Total.
Wow.
Total. I'm like, holy tights, Batman. That is bad.
Watch your language.
Well, and you're
I
seeing
know.
that across the board, right? I mean, this is becoming more and more common where places are closing, or not opening at all because they don't have enough employees.
They don't have people.
Or, nurses who are just leaving the workforce in droves because they're so overworked, right?
Yes.
And so somehow it's like these employers have to be able to work with their employees and make these situations more livable for people.
Yeah. And for employers, that's, I think, a painfully new concept for many.
Mm.
Not making as much money.
Not making enough, as much money, and
it's so ridiculous.
It's get your head around it. If you're making 80% of what you were making before because you have adjusted and are meeting more of the needs of your employee, you're making 80% less. That's just a lot better than not making anything at all if you have to close, because employees are fried chicken right now, and there's only so much bandwidth.
Yeah.
And if you want to be an employer of choice, you need to be the employer of choice.
Well, and I think it's interesting. I have been doing a little bit of research around the Great Resignation, and they're saying that a lot of people, because they've been working remotely, have felt so disconnected from their teams that it's playing a huge role in these resignations. So what are some of the tools that you're helping companies to put into place to deal with that?
That's a really important factor, and it's a tough one. But I think interjecting some fun into the virtual culture, I think, rather than having a complete alienated workforce where you're either 100% on site or you're 100% virtual, I am a big fan of the hybrid approach if you can do it safely. Because that meets the needs of both camps, if you will, but it also brings people together face to face in doing it. Normalizing even some of the good things that I think have come out of Zoom and whatnot is, the door is closed in my office at the moment. Were it not, you might see a tail go trotting across the screen and saying, "That's okay. That's, I've got 2 cats and, we used to have a dog, and that's part of who I am." And even making time to have fun and as a team through different activities and whatnot, and really ramping up the touch points with your employees. If you are virtual, pick up the phone and just talk to them, check in with them, say, "How are you doing?" Not on Zoom, do something kind of retro and dial a phone. And
a good old-fashioned phone call, right?
I know, who'd have thought?
Right.
So I think that personal touch really goes a long way. And if somebody's saying, I'm fried chicken, I can't do this right now, take them seriously, listen to them. Try and come up with a workaround or way that you can meet the needs of both the organization and the employee. It's hard. I don't want to sound Pollyannish. It's a bear, but the solutions are out there, and the compromises might save that working relationship as opposed to what can often be a my way highway type of attitude, really on both parties. But I think the employer's in the control seat in terms of my way highway, unless the employee wants to take the control, and then you're in the Great Resignation.
Right. Yeah.
No, that's so true. Let's shift gears for a second and thinking about, the human dynamics that we're doing and the communication style. Customers of business, dealing with the general public, dealing with the stuff that's going on. What can leaders and business owners do to be more empathetic and understanding of what the customers are going through, and to raise the bar on what it is that they offer to set themselves apart from their competition?
Well, I think, it does come down to listening. I think when a customer comes to you that's frustrated, let's take the restaurant industry where they are so short-staffed, and the customer is going to be losing their mind over how long it's taking them to be served. I think communication is big. And setting expectations and letting them know. And if you muck up, be an adult about it and acknowledge that you mucked up, and apologize and do what is reasonable, but whatever you can to try and make it right. There's the old adage that the customer is always right. And well, no, that's not really true. But
they're always the customer.
They're always the customer. And if you want them to continue to be your customer, sometimes you have to eat a little humble pie and work on relationships. All of this comes down to our relationships.
I think that's such an important point. It seems to me that, there's been a trend in the last few years where maybe there isn't a lot of understanding in businesses, even around customer service anymore. And so how do you help businesses to really get a handle on that for themselves and for their employees?
Well, so much of business operations have been automated and digitized, and I don't have a formula answer for that question, Pamela, but I've been giving it a lot of thought in terms of customer service and the Great Resignation. Customer service these days very often is either through a bot, or you're in chat, or you're through email, or things of that nature. There are some call centers, but that is a dying breed. And if you think about it on the employment side, when you want to apply for a job, you're not mailing in your resume to the hiring manager anymore. You're going through all these systems. And I started in information systems, so I have a deep respect for technology and automation. But there comes a time when maybe you've gone too far, and you've lost the ability to really connect with the person on the other end. Part of what's fueling this labor shortage, I am 100% convinced, is the fact that they've got their HR systems, their automated recruiting systems dialed so tight. People that are looking for jobs, that are qualified, but maybe don't hit your HR SEOs, are being bumped out of consideration, and nobody wins.
Right.
The same thing with the the bots for customer service. There's nothing more frustrating when you're typing in a chat and trying to get help, and the bot says, "Oh, we don't have anything on that. You got
Yeah.
anything else for me?" And it's like,
Right.
no,
You're like, that's my question. So no.
that's my question.
That's all I got.
Yeah, so I think people need to think about their systems, and they need to think about their processes and the outcomes that they generate, and pause and
Yeah.
re-engineer them. Look at the process. The system always determines performance. Always. And that might be people, that might be policy, that might be actual procedures, but the systems you have around that, and if you go back to the family business, the systems around the family, around ownership and business management, they all determine performance. So go back to that and examine, are you getting what you want? And if not, figure out why, get to that root cause, and then get creative.
Such
I love
great
that.
points. Yeah. So around that, are there any softwares that you recommend companies can use to help facilitate reconnecting with their employees and their teams?
That's out of my that's above my pay grade. Sorry, Pamela. I'm not I know a lot of varying tools, but I'm not really in a position to articulate any one or another right now. It
Sure.
really depends on what problem they're trying to solve.
Sure.
And thinking about like employee retainment and engagement, something we were doing at our work when I left was we found that the younger generation really wanted to be involved with social causes. So what we started doing is we started allocating days where they could go volunteer. They could go volunteer as a team, and we started doing stuff. Is that still important today, that the younger generation wants to be involved with organizations that have a deeper sense of what they can do for the community, for the world, for the environment? Is that something that employers should be looking at and business owners should be looking at?
You know, I think that is a very important part of the equation. I know of an individual that was working for a company that had a big philanthropic component to their workplace and their business model and whatnot. And ultimately, they saw the actual disconnect about what the company was saying they were all about with philanthropy and giving back, and what their behavior showed. And I'll say this affectionately, our kids are watching. They have always been watching. And it is important that they see employers that care about the world that we live in, and the various needs and causes. And quite frankly, with my kids being at the age that they are, there is a great deal of anxiety about what is going on, what is being left for them to deal with in the future. And it goes a long way when they find somebody who genuinely integrates it into their mission, or genuinely integrates it into things like the day of volunteering, or participating in a tree planting initiative, or something that is near and dear. And I think climate change is scaring the bejeebies out of that generation. So that would be an area of opportunity without being opportunistic.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Interesting.
It's a great question.
So what are some ways that teams can start to come together? What are some simple tips that you would give a company just right up front to kind of get the process going?
That's a wonderful avenue to go down, because a lot of it comes down to discovery, really taking the time, hitting the timeout button, and having some sort of process that makes sense for that work team to take a beat, pause, and actually set time aside and examine what it is that's going well and what isn't going well. It's actually one of the first things I do when if I can, when I'm onboarding a client, is actually facilitating a business owner and their management team's efforts of saying, okay, what is going well here? Where are our strengths, and what is it that we want to do and accomplish? And Pamela, you might say, well, I think our marketing program is an 8. I think it's the bee's knees. And Christopher, you might say, what? I think it's a 2. And yeah, exactly. And with a well-trained facilitator, I can say, well, why do you think it's an 8? Why do you think it's a 2? Let's get some of these issues out on the table that we've never talked about as a company. And how does that relate to our goals? And how do we then build a plan, a business plan or a strategic plan that helps us go from where we are, now that we have a shared understanding of where we all think it is, and move forward? What's missing is that communication and development of the shared understanding. But that's the genesis for change, is knowing where you are now and where you want to go.
I love that. I love that. When I was in corporate, one of the things I found out was that I kept hearing people say, my staff would say, well, I expected this and I expected that and I expected you. I kept hearing that word expectations, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to do an exercise. So I sat down with all of my staff, all my line staff, all my management staff. It was over 24 at the time. And I just sat with them. I said, okay, what are your expectations for yourself? What are your expectations for your team? What are your expectations for your boss? And what are your expectations for the company? And I just sat down and I listened to them. It was like, I thought it was gonna be 20 minutes. Most meetings were an hour and a half to 2 hours. I sat there and I listened. I took notes, and I was like, okay. And then I would sit there and I just listened at first. I didn't defend or anything. I said, listen. I'm like, and I got through all of them. Like, there was a lot of similarities in what their expectations were. So then what we did as a team is we said, okay, what is the feasibility of making these expectations real? So I had them involved in realizing that some of the expectations they had were just not doable. They wanted this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, well, let's talk about that. So I got them to see on their own and got them to adjust their expectations. But moving forward from that point, I established the trust and said, listen, if your expectation changes, or if a new expectation comes up and you don't communicate to me, and you don't allow me to that opportunity to fix it or whatever, you can't be mad at me later on when you say, oh, I expected you to know that, when you got to communicate. So it was a massive opportunity for me. Do you do any similar exercises with expectations in your clients?
Yeah, that's all. That does weave into the conversations, and that's also when you're facilitating this discovery. Those tidbits come out. So hats off to you for doing that, because what a powerful exercise for you to learn, as well as for them to learn, and building this common understanding that you can say, oh, that's why he never got around to that. Or, oh, I didn't realize you were hearing it this way. You were hearing it that way. It was interesting. It makes me think of, I was listening to one of Brene Brown's podcasts, and she was talking about how they were in a meeting with her entire team, and they had gone round and round and round on this issue. And they had been in this meeting for probably an hour. And finally, one of her colleagues said, I need to call a timeout here. What is the problem we are trying to solve here? After
I've done that
hour,
same thing.
After an hour, and to Brene's credit, she's like, no, don't anybody say anything. And they handed around the Post-it notes, and everybody wrote down their definition of what they thought the problem was that they were there to solve that day, and none of them agreed.
Love it.
Yeah.
So it's, the communication and connection and shared discovery, shared planning, and reviewing how you're doing. It really brings a team together, and can help a business move the needle in their results and outcomes.
Wow, well, you've shared so many powerful insights with us tonight, and I want people to have an opportunity to know how they can get in touch with you, where to reach out to you, and connect with you and your services. So where's the best place for our listeners to find you?
The best place is to go to provenancehill.com. And that would be the site, and there are ways to connect and get more tidbits and things of that nature. There, I also, as I mentioned, run a blog, which can be accessed through the website, but on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook. Exit Stage Right is my handle. So that would be Exit Stage, both spelled out, but Right is abbreviated with an RT. So
perfect. And for those who are listening and are not here with us this evening watching, for the website, that is spelled Provenance, PROVENANCE Hill, HILL.com. So you can find Martha there. Well, thank you so much. Any closing thoughts that you have for the audience before we sign off tonight, Martha?
this has been a delightful conversation. I had so much fun. And, in terms of closing thoughts for the audience, it really, in my mind, it comes down to concentrate on the relationships. The relationship with your coworkers, if you're in a family business, with your family as well as your coworkers, and it all starts there. So
so important for many reasons, but certainly in business, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But thank you. This was so much fun.
Yes, such a pleasure to have
Thank
you.
you.
And Christopher, any closing thoughts from you?
Closing thoughts from me. Don't update your computer software before you do a live show. That's one thing. No,
Okay,
seriously, no. It's been fun with you, Martha. I appreciate definitely.
Thank you.
And just to your point, it really is about relationships. And the first relationship that we didn't even get a chance to discuss, but in closing comments, the first relationship we got to make sure we're taking care of is our relationship with ourselves.
Yes.
And I'm finding a lot of people in my own coaching industry, my coaching business, is that people are not taking care of themselves. They're exhausting themselves, taking care of everybody else, but they're not filling up their own buckets. So for you guys out there in viewership land and podcast land, you guys got to take care of yourself. Hydrate, sleep, some exercise, some decent food. Make sure you're enriching your mind every day. You're journaling. Just a few things you can do to really ease the stress and ease the response factor in the way you're dealing with relationships, because a lot of people are going to react if they're tired and they're hungry and they're overworked and everything. But if you guys take care of yourself, then you're going to be able to be in a more position to respond and therefore nurture those relationships instead of sabotage them. So those are my final thoughts. It's been a pleasure having you on the show, and I hope people reach out and connect with you.
Thank you. Likewise.
Thank you both so much for being here. It's such a joy and pleasure to be with you, Martha. And to all the listeners, thank you for taking the time to be with us tonight. Such a pleasure to be with you as well. And lots of love going out to all of you. We look forward to seeing you here again next week. So thank you, everyone, and good night.